Elijah eventually passes the mantle of his prophetic leadership to a young disciple named Elisha, who asks for 2 times the authority of Elijah. And what's fascinating here is how the author, he's recounted 7 miraculous feats for Elijah, and then he offers stories of 14 acts of power from Elijah. Both prophets were clearly remarkable men, and they played the same role, confronting Israel's kings for idolatry and injustice. And ultimately, they were unsuccessful in turning Israel back from apostasy.
2 Kings 1. After the death of Ahab, Moab rebelled against Israel. Now Ahaziah fell through the lattice in his upper chamber in Samaria and lay sick. So he sent messengers, telling them,
"Go, inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover from this sickness."
But the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite,
"Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say to them, Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are going to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Now therefore, thus says the Lord, you shall not come down from the bed to which you have gone up, but you shall surely die."
So Elijah went. The messengers returned to the king, and he said to them,
"Why have you returned?"
And they said to him,
"There came a man to meet us, and said to us, Go back to the king who sent you, and say to him, Thus says the Lord, Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are sending to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore you shall not come down from the bed to which you have gone up, but you shall surely die."
He said to them,
"What kind of man was he who came to meet you and told you these things?"
They answered him,
"He wore a garment of hair with a belt of leather about his waist."
And he said,
"It is Elijah, the Tishbite."
Then the king sent to him a captain of 50 men with his 50. He went up to Elijah, who was sitting on the top of a hill, and said to him,
"O man of God, the king says, Come down."
But Elijah answered the captain of 50,
"If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50.
Then fire came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. Again the king sent to him another captain of 50 men with his 50. And he answered and said to him,
"O man of God, this is the king's order. Come down quickly."
But Elijah answered them,
If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50.
Then the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. Again the king sent the captain of a third 50 with his 50. And the third captain of 50 went up and came and fell on his knees before Elijah and entreated him,
"O man of God, please let my life and the life of these 50 servants of yours be precious in your sight. Behold, fire came down from heaven and consumed the 2 former captains of 50 men with their 50s. But now, let my life be precious in your sight."
Then the angel of the Lord said to Elijah,
"Go down with him. Do not be afraid of him."
So he arose and went down with him to the king, and said to him,
Thus says the Lord, because you have sent messengers to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, is it because there is no God in Israel to inquire of his word? Therefore you shall not come down from the bed to which you have gone up, but you shall surely die.
So he died according to the word of the Lord that Elijah had spoken. Jehoram became king in his place in the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, because Ahaziah had no son. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaziah that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? 2 Kings 2. Now when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. And Elijah said to Elisha,
Please stay here, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel.
But Elisha said,
As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you.
So they went down to Bethel. And the sons of the prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him,
Do you know that today the Lord will take away your master from over you?
And he said,
Yes, I know it. Keep quiet.
Elijah said to him,
Elisha, please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho.
But he said,
As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you.
So they came to Jericho. The sons of the prophets who were at Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him,
Do you know that today the Lord will take away your master from over you?
And he answered,
Yes, I know it. Keep quiet.
Then Elijah said to him,
Please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan.
But he said,
As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you.
So the two of them went on. 50 men of the sons of the prophets also went and stood at some distance from them as they both were standing by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his cloak and rolled it up and struck the water, and the water was parted to the one side and to the other, till the two of them could go over on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha,
Ask what I shall do for you before I am taken from you.
And Elisha said,
Please, let there be a double portion of your spirit on me.
And he said,
You have asked a hard thing. Yet, if you see me as I am being taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if you do not see me, it shall not be so.
And as they still went on and talked, behold, chariots of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And Elisha saw it, and he cried,
My father! My father! The chariots of Israel and its horsemen!
And he saw him no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them in two pieces. And he took up the cloak of Elijah that had fallen from him, and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. Then he took the cloak of Elijah that had fallen from him, and struck the water, saying,
Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?
And when he had struck the water was parted to the one side and to the other, and Elisha went over. Now when the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho saw him opposite them, they said,
The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha.
And they came to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. And they said to him,
Behold now, there are with your servants 50 strong men. Please let them go and seek your master. It may be that the Spirit of the Lord has caught him up and cast him upon some mountain or into some valley.
And he said,
You shall not send.
But when they urged him till he was ashamed, he said,
Send.
They sent, therefore, 50 men. And for 3 days they sought him, but did not find him. And they came back to him while he was staying at Jericho. And he said to them,
Did I not say to you, Do not go?
Now the men of the city said to Elisha,
Behold, the situation of this city is pleasant, as my lord sees. But the water is bad, and the land is unfruitful.
He said,
Bring me a new bowl, and put salt in it.
So they brought it to him. Then he went to the spring of water, and threw salt in it, and said,
Thus says the Lord, I have healed this water. From now on, neither death nor miscarriage shall come from it.
So the water has been healed to this day, according to the word that Elisha spoke. He went up from there to Bethel, and while he was going up on the way, some small boys came out of the city and jeered at him, saying,
Go up, you bald head! Go up, you bald head!
And he turned around, and when he saw them, he cursed them in the name of the Lord. And 2 she-bears came out of the woods and tore 42 of the boys. From there he went on to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. 2 Kings 3. In the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, Jehoram the son of Ahab became king over Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 12 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, though not like his father and mother, for he put away the pillar of Baal that his father had made. Nevertheless, he clung to the sin of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. He did not depart from it. Now Mesha, king of Moab, was a sheep breeder, and he had to deliver to the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. But when Ahab died, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. So King Jehoram marched out of Samaria at that time and mustered all Israel. And he went and sent word to Jehoshaphat, king of Judah.
The king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go with me to battle against Moab?
And he said,
I will go. I am as you are, my people as your people, my horses as your horses.
Then he said,
By which way shall we march?
Jehoram answered,
By the way of the wilderness of Edom.
So the king of Israel went with the king of Judah and the king of Edom. And when they had made a circuitous march of 7 days, there was no water for the army or for the animals that followed them. Then the king of Israel said,
Alas, the Lord has called these 3 kings to give them into the hand of Moab.
And Jehoshaphat said,
Is there no prophet of the Lord here, through whom we may inquire of the Lord?
Then one of the king of Israel's servants answered,
Elisha the son of Shaphat is here, who poured water on the hands of Elijah.
And Jehoshaphat said,
The word of the Lord is with him.
So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. And Elisha said to the king of Israel,
What have I to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father and to the prophets of your mother.
But the king of Israel said to him,
No, it is the Lord who has called these 3 kings to give them into the hand of Moab.
And Elisha said,
As the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, were it not that I have regard for Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, I would neither look at you nor see you. But now bring me a musician.
And when the musician played, the hand of the Lord came upon him, and he said,
Thus says the Lord, I will make this dry stream bed full of pools. For thus says the Lord, You shall not see wind or rain, but that stream bed shall be filled with water, so that you shall drink, you, your livestock, and your animals. This is a light thing in the sight of the Lord. He will also give the Moabites into your hand, and you shall attack every fortified city and every choice city, and shall fell every good tree, and stop up all springs of water, and ruin every good piece of land with stones.
The next morning, about the time of offering the sacrifice, behold, water came from the direction of Edom, till the country was filled with water. When all the Moabites heard that the kings had come up to fight against them, all who were able to put on armor, from the youngest to the oldest, were called out and were drawn up at the border. And when they rose early in the morning, and the sun shone on the water, the Moabites saw the water opposite them as red as blood. And they said,
This is blood! The kings have surely fought together and struck one another down. Now then, Moab, to the spoil!
But when they came to the camp of Israel, the Israelites rose and struck the Moabites till they fled before them. And they went forward, striking the Moabites as they went. And they overthrew the cities, and on every good piece of land every man threw a stone until it was covered. They stopped every spring of water, and felled all the good trees, till only its stones were left in Kir-Hareseth, and the slingers surrounded and attacked it. When the king of Moab saw that the battle was going against him, he took with him 700 swordsmen to break through opposite the king of Edom, but they could not. Then he took his oldest son, who was to reign in his place, and offered him for a burnt offering on the wall. And there came great wrath against Israel, and they withdrew from him and returned to their own land. 2 Kings 4. Now the wife of one of the sons of the prophets cried to Elisha,
Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord. But the creditor has come to take my 2 children to be his slaves.
And Elisha said to her,
What shall I do for you? Tell me, what have you in the house?
And she said,
Your servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil.
Then he said,
Go outside, Borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty vessels, and not too few. Then go in and shut the door behind yourself and your sons, and pour into all these vessels. And when one is full, set it aside."
So she went from him and shut the door behind herself and her sons. And as she poured, they brought the vessels to her. When the vessels were full, she said to her son,
"Bring me another vessel."
And he said to her,
"There is not another."
Then the oil stopped flowing. She came and told the man of God, and he said,
"Go, sell the oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on the rest."
One day Elisha went on to Shunem, where a wealthy woman lived, who urged him to eat some food. So whenever he passed that way, he would turn in there to eat food. And she said to her husband,
"Behold now, I know that this is a holy man of God who is continually passing our way. Let us make a small room on the roof with walls and put there for him a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp, so that whenever he comes to us, he can go in there."
One day he came there, and he turned into the chamber and rested there. And he said to Gehazi his servant,
"Call this Shunammite."
When he had called her, she stood before him. And he said to him,
"Say now to her, 'See, you have taken all this trouble for us. What is to be done for you? Would you have a word spoken on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army?"
She answered,
"I dwell among my own people."
And he said,
"What then is to be done for her?"
Gehazi answered,
"Well, she has no son, and her husband is old."
He said,
"Call her."
And when he had called her, she stood in the doorway. And he said,
"At this season, about this time next year, you shall embrace a son."
And she said,
"No, my lord, O man of God, do not lie to your servant."
But the woman conceived, and she bore a son about that time the following spring, as Elisha had said to her. When the child had grown, he went out one day to his father among the reapers. And he said to his father,
"Oh, my head, my head!"
The father said to his servant,
"Carry him to his mother."
And when he had lifted him and brought him to his mother, the child sat on her lap till noon, and then he died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door behind him, and went out. Then she called to her husband, and said,
"Send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys, that I may quickly go to the man of God and come back again."
And he said,
"Why will you go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath."
She said,
"All is well."
Then she saddled the donkey, and she said to her servant,
"Urge the animal on, do not slacken the pace for me unless I tell you."
So she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When the man of God saw her coming, he said to Gehazi his servant,
"Look, there is the Shunammite. Run at once to meet her, and say to her, 'Is all well with you? Is all well with your husband? Is all well with the child?'"
And she answered,
"All is well."
And when she came to the mountain to the man of God, she caught hold of his feet, and Gehazi came to push her away. But the man of God said,
"Leave her alone, for she is in bitter distress, and the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me."
Then she said,
"Did I ask my lord for a son? Did I not say, 'Do not deceive me'?"
He said to Gehazi,
"Tie up your garment and take my staff in your hand and go. If you meet anyone, do not greet him, and if anyone greets you, do not reply. And lay my staff on the face of the child."
Then the mother of the child said,
"As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you."
So he arose and followed her. Gehazi went on ahead and laid the staff on the face of the child, but there was no sound or sign of life. Therefore he returned to meet him and told him,
"The child has not awakened."
When Elisha came into the house, he saw the child lying dead on his bed. So he went in and shut the door behind the two of them and prayed to the Lord. Then he went up and lay on the child, putting his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. And as he stretched himself upon him, the flesh of the child became warm. Then he got up again and walked once back and forth in the house, and went up and stretched himself upon him. The child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. Then he summoned Gehazi and said,
"Call this Shunammite."
So he called her, and when she came to him, he said,
"Pick up your son."
She came and fell at his feet, bowing to the ground. Then she picked up her son and went out. And Elisha came again to Gilgal when there was a famine in the land. And as the sons of the prophets were sitting before him, he said to his servant,
"Set on the large pot, and boil stew for the sons of the prophets."
One of them went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and gathered from it his lap full of wild gourds, and came and cut them up into the pot of stew, not knowing what they were. And they poured out some for the men to eat. But while they were eating of the stew, they cried out,
"O man of God, there is death in the pot!"
And they could not eat it. He said,
"Then bring flour."
And he threw it into the pot, and said,
"Pour some out for the men, that they may eat."
And there was no harm in the pot. A man came from Baal Shalisha, bringing the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, and fresh ears of grain in his sack. And Elisha said,
"Give to the men, that they may eat."
But his servant said,
"How can I set this before 100 men?"
So he repeated,
"Give them to the men, that they may eat. For thus says the Lord, they shall eat and have some left."
So he set it before them, and they ate and had some left according to the word of the Lord.